Sure.
How do you like the Heidel ball? Oh boy. Okay, guys. Real quick, I wanted to give you my thoughts on the Heidel ball. All right. So a lot of you guys have been asking me my thoughts on it, and I just figured this would be the best way to do it. There were some things about the ball that made me hopeful, and primarily things like addressing mouse movement. That's something I've been asking for a really long time now. We've been talking about that for literally years. And to me, that was a big sign of hope that they're finally taking desync seriously. It seems to me like they can't quite address the core problems that cause desync. So what they're doing is they're trying to get after the symptoms of desync rather than the core problem. Because I think the core problem is baked into the core of the game. And I think that because they can't get at it, they said, hey, you know what? We're going to tackle the things that might create desync. But removing mouse to move and adding windups to, range grabs, well, that's a great thing. Range grabs itself are very desyncy because they can be very jarring. Right? You're fighting multiple people sometimes, especially like an AOS, for example, and then you get grabbed at range, it can be very jarring. Or if you're moving, it can really, really jostle you. So I think that's a very fair thing, and it makes it so that there's more risk involved in getting a range grab versus a melee grab, because a melee grab, you have to literally be in the enemy's face, whereas a range grab, you can grab them from safely out of their melee range, and if you're a melee player, that's pretty unfair because you're beyond my reach and you're able to put me in a grip. So I think that those are very big things that'll help. But I feel like there's still more work to do. They need to make more obvious recovery animations for failed grab animations on classes like Ranger, Tamer, and Strikers, and even... No, I wouldn't even say Dracania. Dracania has a pretty obvious fail animation. But they need to make more obvious fail animations, similar to how Warrior, Berserker, and Dracania have very obvious fail animations. Other classes need obvious fail animations. Classes that have a very rapid grab should not be able to iframe into that rapid grab, because those also cause desync and are pretty unfair mechanics. When a Warrior, Guardian, Valkyrie, or Berserker misses their grab, there's a very clear and punishable animation. Every class needs that, especially Tamers and Awakened Rangers. Iframe into grab needs to go away too. It's just ridiculous, if not more so than a range grab. And lastly, standing iframes need to go. In a game that teaches you that motion is defense, or defense icons are defense, standing still and having an iframe should not exist. And there are 3 classes off the top of my head that I can think of that have that. Guardian has a standing iframe, Tamer has a standing iframe, and the alt on a Striker is a standing iframe. And that's a standing iframe that deals damage. And that's completely absurd and very unfair and should go. On the desync front, they need to slow all combat down about 15% in total, and the game will start to feel a lot better overall, and it will help alleviate the issues with desync. The combat right now is faster than the game can handle on its current engine. And the server tick rate can't keep up with it either. So it won't fix desync, but if they did those things, it would definitely help address desync. And on this note, I am sorry for that back and forth. The biggest worry that I have for Prolibus is that they will magically forget that they wanted to implement these changes that they've announced. There's been far too many times where Prolibus has taken a stand against a bad mechanic and then totally reversed course the next time that class was announced. For example, we didn't want iframe damage, and then they released Corsair with iframe damage. Or they didn't want a class with multi-tick CCs, and then we have a Wagyu and then Deadeye with multi-tick CCs. And these multi-tick CCs are not, the game's not built for it. It creates this thing called Hit Excel, which actually knocks you out of your protection. So let me show you something about grave digging, right? And if there's a Megu anywhere that's in the chat and can do this with me, like if there's an Awegu here, I would like to sample this with you. I'll meet you in a BA so we could show you. This is my grave digging animation, right? Look how long the super armor icon lasts. It lasts a while. It lasts until the sword comes up, right? That icon, I am in super armor all the way until right here. The problem is with Hit Excel is when I do this animation, and I do this animation logically to protect myself. Let's say I know there's an Awegu coming in for me, and I want to be able to protect myself and do some damage to that Awegu. I'm going to do this. The problem with this is the second my sword touches the ground, I've been Hit Excel'd out of my protection. So in a way, it penetrates my super armor, and it's not a grapple. It just knocks me over, and that is extraordinarily unfair. There's no other mechanic that works like that, and it's not an intended mechanic of the game. It is a bug. If there's an Awegu in the chat, I would love it for me to be able to show this on screen with you right now, where I have an Awegu spin through me, and I could fall over and then just kind of demonstrate that live. That would be ideal. I might have to go back and edit this portion later on with some footage from a Awegu. They've had these classes that they say they're going to do this with a class, and then they reverse course. strategist who did the opposite in the very next session. Or they say, hey, we're going to remove slows, and then they release a new class and they put slows on that new class. Or they say, hey, we're going to slow things down a little bit, and the next class comes out and it's ridiculously fast. So these are the things that we see with PA, and that's my primary worry with this. They're going to remove resistances but not compensate it with something else. Like, for example, Warrior has passive grab resist. So what are we going to get in its place? Are we going to get passive DR? Are we going to get something else in its place? Are they going to put slows back on our attacks? What will they give us in place of those things is what I do wonder. I think what would make sense is have a passive, I guess, just flat HP gain or a flat DR gain based off of the class difference, but I digress. Like, I know that PA may want to stay away from like scores, or not scores, like altering DR stats for different classes and just making one class particularly tanky because it's just that class in general. I digress. Reducing hits on abilities like multi-tick CCs, only to put them right back on new classes, brings me back up to where we're at. So we just end up with some classes feeling really old, and new classes are exciting and definitely a moneymaker for Pearl Abyss, but that money needs to be reinvested into Black Desert Online and not shunted into side projects like Crimson Desert or Doki V, so the game can continue to grow and develop new content. So when we talk about Crimson Desert has a release date this month. My worry with Pearl Abyss is that instead of reallocating the development team that they had for Crimson Desert into Black Desert Online, they just fire those people. And then we just lose that development team. And then we've had an inferior product that was funded by this game. And it was funded by your purchases of Pearls, and it's funded by EVE Online, because EVE Online is also owned by Pearl Abyss. It's funded by EVE's purchases, but Black Desert Online makes, in North America specifically, is their moneymaker. And we don't get the content we don't get the value dollars that are being invested into that company put back into Black Desert Online. And that's my primary worry as well, that our investment is not being returned to us. We have 31 classes, and about 25 of them have 2 different playstyles. That means we have somewhere between 56 to 58 playstyles in this game. That's a lot. To me, I'm not excited to see a new class like Wukong and Savior show up, because now this means that we have even more playstyles that are going to be entering the game. You have a guild that maxes out at about 100 people. And right now, you can have more than half of your guild play. Like, you can have 100 people and have only 2 people on some classes, and some classes won't be copied at all. Not classes, but some classes and playstyles between Succession and Awakening. So it's just a lot of options, and I think we're a little bit spoiled on those options. And so I also want to kind of talk about things like evasion, accuracy, and gear unification. All right, so the evasion changes, big dub. I think those evasion changes are amazing, because what they did was they kind of nerfed evasion, and I think evasion is still too strong, but they made it so that evasion and DR now have to interact with each other in a more meaningful way, because they're giving evasion players more DR and they're giving DR players more evasion, basically unifying gear. I love the gear unification. I think that's great. I think gear unification is just amazing for the game. Another way they could do this is by adding a item from a drop zone, perhaps, that combines the effects of like your DR or evasion artifact, and then combines that with your PvE artifact, so you get one artifact set that does the same thing. Or you can continue to have 2 different artifact sets, maybe with 2 different set of light stones in there that activate whether you're in PvE or PvP. I think that would be amazing. So that way I can run one set of artifacts that work for both PvE and PvP, that have combined effects, but also have 2 different lightstone sets in there that change based on whether I'm in PvP content or whether I'm in PvE content. That way, if I'm out there grinding and I'm attacked and I'm already wearing the new, sovereign armor type system, whatever they're going to call it, right? And I'm wearing the sovereign weapons and the sovereign offhand, all the gear from that is combined. So now if I have a crystal loadout that activates in PvP and a artifact loadout that activates in PvP, now I don't need to switch anything. I can go straight from PvP to PvE and vice versa from PvE to PvP. I think that would be amazing. Yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes my thoughts on the ball. There was a lot of things that were announced at the ball, and most of them, I just gonna be honest with you, I don't give a shit about. I think Blue Battlefield is really exciting for a lot of players that have been looking forward to ocean content. And I do think that, again, Pearl Abyss is acknowledging that the game moves too fast. And Blue Battlefield, they are making it so that those ships move slower and you're getting slower ships. Why are they doing that? To get after desync. So Pearl Abyss needs to continue chasing after desync and stopping the systems that create desync. In that, they need to address our movement and attack speed in combat. And I think like in Terra, for example, in Terra, we had combat speed, right? Where you moved a speed everywhere, but when you were in combat, you moved substantially slower, and that was combat speed. So if you got out of combat, then you'd run at full speed, and that's how you get away from somebody. That is an idea. But I know Perlibus has to be very careful when it comes to balancing PvP, because if you slow the game down too much, the game starts to feel really sluggish and then people quit. And no matter what, like, it's kind of tough because no matter what they do right now, the game is going to feel sluggish. Like if they slow it down 15%, it's going to feel like you have a constant slow effect on you until people acclimate to that being normal. The problem with the game right now in PvP is everyone is just spamming abilities and hoping that somebody lands a catch, and that's not great. Another thing they need to do is they need to add an iframe to the like all the changes they made to V change, for example, those were great. Making Vs harder to sniff actually improved the game. I think that was awesome. But one thing they definitely need to do is add an iframe to the second you press V. And I'm not talking about a long iframe. It could be like a half-second iframe. The second you press V, you should immediately be an iframe. So like you see how it took so long for that iframe icon to appear? It takes a second through the animation. That shouldn't be the case. If you're using emergency escape, you should be able to use the emergency escape. The second press V, the ability should become available to you, and you should not have to go through an animation, because that's what causes a lot of people to die just before they V, is they press V and then the animation doesn't go off in time and then they die activating the animation, or because of desync or latency or whatever the case may be, they never get to activate that animation, therefore they die. And they could do the same thing on the exit of V, where the second you come out of V, you have an extra maybe 0.25 seconds of invulnerability to prevent people from getting CC'd the second they come out of V. And maybe that might change as soon as, like, maybe that goes away the second they activate an actual ability. I think those are very fair ways to handle that. So, that's my thoughts on the changes there and how they can continue to improve that. I said a lot of things. I'm going to read chat now. If you guys have your own thoughts and opinions on anything I said, please do share them right now. This would be a great opportunity. Like I said, this will go up on YouTube, so you're welcome to kind of add in. This will be your comment section. About mouse to move, I remember when you were fighting a Musa at Crescent Cliff and he was too desyncy with mouse to move. Yeah, you're talking about Forest Hunter. Forest Hunter it's not just the click to move. He uses click to move, but he also uses camera movement. So what he'll do is this. So if let's say you're a player in front of me, right? And you're this NPC. If I dash in front of you, I will collide into you. My character will hit you like a wall, right? The difference here is that this Musa will do this. He'll get in front of you, or he'll do this, but instead of facing your character, he rotates his camera like this and then dashes backwards through me. That makes the situation where it doesn't create collision, because if you dash backwards through a player, there's no collision. When you use mouse movement and camera movement are very desyncy in Black Desert Online, and part of that is, one, because of the speed of the game, and two, because the tick rate can't handle the information that's being delivered. The game expects the player to move in a certain way, and the player defies what the game expects, so the game visually creates one thing and then actually does something else. But yeah, that's happened a lot, and I think that's genuinely unfair, and they need to fix that. Nice. One thing they need to do is they need to hire quality servers. Quality of servers is, I don't think, something we're going to see. I'm going to be honest with you, because they took them this long to get to our servers where we are now. So what they're doing now is, instead of fixing the actual desync itself, they're fixing the things that cause desync, and I think that's good. The game just needs to slow down a little bit. They need to fix Ninja's combo, speed cancels, and stamina to be universal usage, so that when you pick it up on a different class, the stamina consumption is the same. I can somewhat agree with that, because some classes should definitely feel different than others. But just like Ninja needs upgrades, so does a warrior, right? Here's how you get warrior movement up to 2025. The problem, and I know I'm taking this away from ninjas, I'm going to bring this over to warriors for a second. I'll bring it back to ninjas, right? The problem with a warrior, right, is our defense is this, right? This is our defensive movement. And in Arena of Solari, currently, we get hit a few times, our shield breaks. So the only way we can recover that shield is by dashing around like this. And as you can see, it's all frontal guard movement. All this movement is frontal guard with the exception of the solar flare, right? So how do we fix that? Very, very easily. I'm not asking for this to be a super armor. Most classes have abilities like that are super armor. That is, I think it's not a far reach to ask for, but I'm not asking for that. This is our iframe. It is nothing in between, and it's an iframe roughly every 3 seconds, right? What I would like to see is them add super armor on this ability, make it frontal guard super armor on this ability, and make it frontal guard super armor on this ability. These are short range abilities that move very quickly. They use our shield movement, so it makes sense. It's logical because our shield is still being in use, and they have longer cooldowns. They have, like, Frenzy Dash, I think, is a 13-second cooldown. This is like a 5-second cooldown. That would help Warrior in virtually every scenario of the game, to include large scale. The problem right now with Warrior is you get into large scale combat, this is the only option you have. You get in, you do this, and you get out. And that's not a lot of movement. And when you're fighting in ball versus ball combat, it's impossible. You will get CC'd on your way out. There's no way that you don't. And this is part of why a lot of warriors are going to sit there and back POV in every aspect of the game. Because the only place that warriors really going to excel is in 1 versus 1, where we can keep our eyes on an enemy and make sure that our frontal guard movement is facing that enemy and pray that we don't get splashed from behind by something. That's how you bring warrior movement up to 2025. That's literally all they would have to do, is take these abilities that are strictly frontal guard and these 2 specific abilities that are strictly frontal guard and add super armor and frontal guard to them. So just make them both super armor and frontal guard. And boom. Just like that, Warrior is now a 2025 class for movement. The damage component, I have a much more specific write-up, which I will actually pull up, so give me 1 second. You put Stiff on Solar Flare by default. You put a Frontal Guard on Frenzied Strike and Severing Thrust by default. Frontal Guard on, you put a Stiff on this ability, that's Solar Flare. You put a Frontal Guard on this ability. This is a PvE only ability. This ability is strictly PvE, right? They just need to add a frontal guard to that by default, because the only core skill that you're going to pick up in PvE is going to be Frenzied Strikes. There's no reason to run anything else. You'd always run that in PvE. So instead of doing that, they could make the choices interesting and actually get rid of that and just put that on the skill by default, because it needs to be. It's very similar to Scars of Dusk. It's very similar to Scars of Dusk and Awakening. It's a slow ability. This ability itself should be sped up about 10 to 15%, and then it will feel a lot better. You put Frontal Guard on that by default, speed it up a little bit, and then it's a really good PvE ability, and it does not need to be cored, and you can actually use your core skill on something else. They also need to add Frontal Guard on Severing Thrust by default. So Severing Thrust is our Magnus skill ability. This is a unprotected ability. It's a completely unprotected float. It's not great. You know, it's just not great. This is our Magnus ability. That's it. This ability could just be a Frontal Guard. No one uses it because it's completely unprotected. It's very risky. But if they put it in Frontal Guard, it is a good ability to use in a different situation. I'm not asking for it to be fully protected. Most Magnus abilities seem to be. I would like it to just be a Frontal Guard ability. And then you'd shift the core skills from Solar Flare and Frenzy Strike to adding Super Armor to Heaven's Cleave, which is this ability. Add this Super Armor to this ability, and that becomes a really, really good ability. This is a very unpopular ability with warriors. The way you make this super popular is by you just add Super Armor to it. And then therefore, Heaven's Cleave Solar Flare becomes a Super Armor combo, which is actually quite good to use, right? You can actually use that and it becomes very, very helpful. And then what you would do is you'd add a stun effect. You'd add a core ability that gives you a stun effect for our Awakened Kick. So no one right now currently uses Kick. This is a Flow Need Kick is a terrible ability. Nobody is using this. If they give this a stun in a core skill, suddenly this becomes a good PvE skill, because there are some mechanics that require to use stun. For example, when you go into Pit of the Undying. This would put a stun in the Awakened Warrior's kit and allow us to choose whether we want the stun or not. So I feel like adding stun to this as a core skill would be a good replacement for Frenzy Strike, and adding Super Armor to Heaven's Cleave would be a good replacement for the core Solar Flare, because you put them on default, right? You take the effects of Hilt Strike and you'd add it to Balance Strike, right? So that you don't need 2 abilities. We just need the 1. Having 2 of these that do this is excessive, right? You just need the 1. So they can add the ability, the flow Hilt Strike into Balance Strike, all those effects, and then you remove Hilt Strike completely. Then you replace Hilt Strike with a Frontal Cone attack with good PvE modifiers and PvP plus down attack modifiers for PvP. So this would basically be designed as a finishing move, right? And the move and they wouldn't even need to make a new ability. They would just need to take this. You add this, right? Just as it is, perfectly as it is. In PvE, you'd give it good PvE damage, and in PvP, you'd make it a good down attack damage modifier. Not a good base use. On regular use, this won't do very much, but if the enemy's on the ground, that move does damage. It is a great combo finisher. It suddenly becomes an execute. It looks cool, it feels cool, and it looks. And I think that would actually add quite a bit of quality to the warrior. And it's already a super armor. We already have the animation. No one's already using this. Like, there's nothing else that uses this. So you just add that to the game. We're good to go. You take that ability, you give it a new name, you tune it for the PvP damage, you keep the ability as is. Otherwise, it's an excellent PvE and PvP finisher. This ability is a slow attack, but perfect for punishing grounded targets. And you do this, and then Awakened Warrior is now a 2025 class. It is appealing, it is fun, it is exciting, it has protections that are reasonable, it still has gaps and vulnerabilities. And that's my feedback for both Heidel and Warrior. So I'm going to cap it there. A far cry to ask for similar things for other classes. Other classes currently are very, very protected. So bringing up some of our older classes, such as Ninja, up to 25 are good. But the way that they've gone about it hasn't been great. And they've been doing it by perhaps like adding poisons and stuff to the game. So, all right, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on that, guys? What do you think? Yeah, I want them to stop adding new classes to the game and bring classes up to 2025. That's basically what I want. I don't want to see Savior arrive and replace Warrior. I want Warrior to feel like a 2025 class.
Must die.